I think it's fair to say that a large portion of Nebraska's fan base, we all wanted Mike Ekeler as the next special teams coordinator. We know he's an elite special teams coordinator. And the good thing is, Matt Rule knocked it out of the park. This is a home run hire for Nebraska. Hello, Husker Nation, and welcome in to another edition of the Cornhusker Huddle. As always, I am your host, Brian Moore. Today, we're talking Mike Ekeler. He is your new special teams coordinator. He is an elite special teams coordinator, and we talked a lot about Mike Ekeler and his special teams units on Justin's channel yesterday on our live show. We went about an hour and a half, and a lot of that talk was about Mike Ekeler. So a lot of what we talked about, I'm going to cover today. We're doing a little bit more stats and stuff today, but if you haven't, go ahead and watch our live show from yesterday. Like I said, it's about an hour and a half long, so check that out. But there's a couple of my sources, which really are just my friends and family. There's just people that I know that know someone, or just they know the right information. So I'll call them my friends and family that are my sources. I know for a fact that Nebraska contacted Mike Ekeler at least a week following the Iowa game. So this was something that was set in motion a while ago. We're talking, what was that, Black Friday, so it's been a week after Black Friday or so. So this was about 2 months ago that this was set in motion. I think Matt Rule was just saving face when he talked to the media about, when he said that that Foley was the right guy for the job and all that stuff. That's just saving face. The conversations behind the scenes were not good, as you can imagine. We know Matt Rule's a nice guy, but he's a demanding head coach. He is a true CEO. He is everything that we've wanted from a head coach at Nebraska. Someone that holds his coaches accountable, that has high standards, high expectations. He just needs to start winning some more games. Maybe get 8 or 9 wins and then keep elevating. But right now, Matt Rule is doing everything right. He's making the tough decisions. He demoted Satterfield, brought in an elite offensive mind in Dana Holgorsen. He let Tony White walk because of differences. He brought in John Butler. I remember when Nebraska brought in John Butler last season, I said, that's going to be your next defensive coordinator. I think that was pretty obvious, actually. I don't want to say they pushed Tony White out, but they definitely weren't clamoring to have him back. There was definitely some internal issues. That's why they brought in Phil Snow after they got blown out by 50 to Indiana, because there was some internal issues. The same thing for the special teams unit. Nebraska had to move on from Foley, and he knew it. He knew it was coming. There's no question about it. We know that Ekeler was contacted at least as early as the week following the Iowa game. And we kept saying, myself on this channel and on Justin's channel on live streams and even on X, if you follow me on X, you had to keep an eye out on Ekeler's contract. It was up for renewal on January 31st. And we know that Ekeler had a contract extension from Tennessee. We know that for a fact. And we know he's had that pretty much since December, and he hasn't signed it, and he never did. So we kept saying that you need to keep an eye. If he signs that contract extension, he's not your next special teams coordinator. And on Friday, on January 31st, when his contract ended, and then Matt Rule had his press conference the following day, and Mike Ekeler was not announced, but he was also not announced that he was staying at Tennessee. That was the moment I knew 100% certainty that he was coming to Nebraska. Why would you not sign an extension at Tennessee if you're staying? You know what I mean? Like, I think that should have been everyone's kind of like their alarm bells were going off. Like, okay, Ekeler didn't re-sign his extension. Nebraska has an opening. We know for 100% certainty he was contacted. He's interviewed, all that fun stuff. It's Mike Ekeler. I think Saturday he was already he had already accepted the offer, and they were just kind of like going over their contract details and whatnot, which we'll get into here now, actually. So, Ekeler was making about I think it was $575 at Tennessee. Let me double check. Yeah, it was $575,000 annually at Tennessee as their outside linebackers coach or linebackers coach and special teams coordinator. He is going to come to Nebraska as just the special teams coordinator because we have Rob Dvorak as our inside linebackers coach, and we have Phil Simpson as our outside linebackers coach. So he's actually going to have less responsibility, just focus on special teams, which has really become his passion, which we talked about last night on Justin's live stream. And I've been told that to expect his salary in the 600 to 650-ish thousand range, maybe a little less than 650, but that's what I've been told to expect his salary to be. Nebraska's not playing around anymore. Matt Rule, his first staff, he didn't have a lot of time to build. He wanted to build it the way he always did at Temple and at Baylor. The problem is, and he realized this after a year and a half, I don't have the time. This is Matt Rule thinking, how I imagine the conversation went in his head. I don't have the time to develop coaches and players. I need to get experienced coaches at key positions, and I can still have younger coaches that are developing. Like, for example, I would say Rob Dvorak, even though he's done an excellent job. He's a younger coach. I think he's my age. He's 32. He's still a young coach in the coaching game, but he's done an excellent job. Or he realized I have to move on from McGuire. And I don't care what anybody tells you. I don't care what Rule says. They were moving on from McGuire. He was not welcome back as the main wide receiver coach. They were going to offer him an off-field job or like an assistant wide receivers coach. But he was not going to be your wide receivers coach next year regardless. So he realized, okay, I need to get a more senior staff. So what did he do? He went out and promoted John Butler, who's got, 30 years in coaching. He's coached one of the best secondaries in the NFL for Buffalo. Multiple all-pro players at Buffalo. Micah Hyde, I believe, just announced his retirement, coached by John Butler. And then what did he do? He went out and got Dana Holgorsen as his offensive coordinator, who has proven sustained success as a head coach and a play caller. And then what did he do? He went out and brought in Phil Snow, who has been around college and NFL football for all of 40-plus years. He's been Matt's defensive coordinator at Temple and Baylor, and then he was like an analyst or an off-field assistant in Carolina. And then he brought in a younger guy that he could develop as a coach, Terry Braden, on the defensive line. But then he let Dana bring in Da'Keil Shorts at wide receiver coach. He's proven. Tank Dell, damn good receiver in the NFL. I think we'd all agree, right? Well, who was his wide receiver coach? Da'Keil Shorts. Who was his offensive coordinator / head coach? Dana Holgorsen. So they did a great job. Matt Rule did a great job of bringing in senior level staff that are proven and then getting a developmental piece that they can develop over the next year or 2 or 3 as a good defensive line coach in Braden. And then we saw it with recruiting. They brought in, they're tied for the largest portal class in Nebraska history, which the portal's only been around for 4 years. But still, 16 transfers. He's going to have some developmental recruits, but he is not going to screw around and say, I'm going to go get guys that take 3 years to develop. He can't do that anymore, and he realized it. So kudos to Matt Rule for adjusting to the new wave of college football. Got a little sidetracked there. I apologize, but I think just the Ekeler hire isn't just about special teams. It's such a broader discussion because he's never really worked with Mike Ekeler, to my knowledge. He's never worked with Dana Holgorsen. He's never worked with John Butler. He's never worked with Da'Keil Shorts. And he's never worked with Terry Braden. And that was one thing that Scott Frost refused to do, that Mike Riley refused to do, that even Bill Callahan back in his era, and Bo Pelini too, they didn't really bring in anyone that was a proven coordinator or position coach that they weren't familiar with. And I understand you have to trust the people you're working with, and that is a huge part of it. But on the other hand, you can't just bring in a bunch of young people that you're familiar with just to give them a job. Like, you have to take risks. Alabama under Nick Saban did it all the time. They basically had a reform camp for failed head coaches. But he brought in people that had been proven at offensive coordinator or position coach wise and let them develop more, that they were proven as a coordinator or position coach, and then they left and went to become great head coaches. So I'm really pumped about what Matt Rule is doing. We have adults in charge at Nebraska again. Thank you. Somebody finally gets it. Like, this isn't hire your buddy. He demoted Satterfield, who he's worked with forever. He fired Ed Foley, who he's been friends with and worked with forever. Your job is on the line every day in this business. You can't afford to drag crappy coaches along. No offense to Foley, but he sucked at his job. Let's be real. Speaking of Ed Foley, what a disaster he was as a special teams coordinator, and what a home run hire Mike Ekeler is. In 2020, Tennessee's special teams efficiency ranking, this is the year before Mike Ekeler was brought in, they were 93rd nationally. The year he took over in 2021, they were 11th nationally in efficiency. Nebraska was 126th. In 2022, they were second. Nebraska was 41st. In 2023, this is their worst special teams unit, 36. Still pretty darn good. Nebraska was 73rd. In 2024, this past season, they were 9th, and Nebraska was 86th. And you can watch my video I did a while back. It's titled like Ed Foley Fired or something like that. We did a breakdown of Nebraska's special teams numbers a little bit more in depth. I'm not going to do a lot of that in this video. I really want to just focus more so on the Tennessee side of things with Ekeler. We're going to do some comparisons with Nebraska, but I really want to focus on some of the stuff that Ekeler accomplished at Tennessee. So, in 3 or 4 years at Tennessee, they led the SEC in punt return average, which is phenomenal. And I'll post these stats here in a little bit up in this area here, so we can see the comparison between the two. But here's a crazy stat. In 4 years, they had 1,298 punt return yards. They allowed 128 punt return yards in 4 years. That is just phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal. And that's not just having a good coverage unit. That's having a good punter too, because they had a really solid punter. In 2021, Tennessee was top 20 nationally in 5 special teams categories, and they were either first or second in SEC in punt return D, punt return average, net punting, and kickoff return average. Absolutely phenomenal special teams. Tennessee's punt returner ranked second nationally in punt return average at 27 yards a return. So per return, he was getting 27 yards. I think after 3 games this past season, Nebraska had 47. Put it in comparison. After 3 games, they had 47. And this guy was basically getting, 50 plus yards a game if they had 2 punt returns. He had a combined 900 kickoff and punt return yards in 2021, I believe it was. He was that was the second most in program history at Tennessee for kickoff and punt return yard combined, 900 yards. He was a first team all SEC returner. In 2022, Tennessee was third in the FBS in punt return yards. In 2023, Tennessee ranked top 25 nationally in 5 special teams categories. Punt returner was ranked 6th in the FBS and 3rd in the SEC in punt return average at 15 yards per return. I'm sorry, that was 15 yards per return for his entire career. Phenomenal. The goal, like if you hear Bill Bush on 93.7 The Ticket on Early Break, he always says, and even Matt Rule and Foley said this, your goal is to get 10 yards on a return. Basically get a first down. They were getting 15 yards for this guy his entire career. And in field goals, we know that was an issue at Nebraska. They had a transfer from USC a few years back. He played there for 2 years, and he was 28 of 36 in 2 seasons. They had a transfer from Indiana that was 18 of 23 on field goals in 2023. And last year, they had a true freshman, or redshirt freshman, 1 and 2, kicker. His name was Max Gilbert. He was 20 of 26 on field goals as a redshirt freshman or true freshman last year. Last season alone, Nebraska had 7 blocked kicks. 7 blocked kicks and 4 blocked punts. It was the most in the NCAA last season. Tennessee had 0. Nada. We're going to do a stats overview real quick here. And I'll talk about Tennessee's production, and I'll put the comparison to Nebraska. Well, I'll probably fit it right here once I do this stuff in the editing part. So in 2021, this is punt return production. I'm not going to go over all their special team stuff because that's a lot. But I looked at the return stuff because, one, those are the most exciting parts of special teams, personally. Also, those are like the plays that can change a game, like a big punt return or a big kick return. Those can change the game. Remember against Wisconsin, the opening kickoff, Corey Barney took it like 60 yards. Like, those are plays that can change the game. And so that's why I wanted just to compare and contrast. Like, we'll look at punt return and kickoff returns, but there is a bunch of stats that we can do. If you'd like, I can do it in another video. You just got to let me know in the comments if you want me to do a complete numbers breakdown between Tennessee and Nebraska over the same time span. So in 2021, their punt return production, they were averaging 11.7 yards per return. Keep in mind, this is Ekeler's first season. That ranked 9th nationally and 1st in the SEC. In 2022, they were 16.5 yards per return, which was 16th nationally, which was the worst they did under Mike Ekeler. They were 2nd in the SEC. In 2023, they were at 12.33 yards per return. That was 4th nationally. It was 1st in the SEC. In 2024, 15.7 yards per carry or per return. 16th nationally and 1st in the SEC. Kickoff returns, Tennessee, 2021. Again, Ekeler's first year. They were 25.4 yards per return, which was 14th nationally and 3rd in the SEC. In 2022, they were 18.78 yards per return. This was their worst year, 85th nationally, but 8th in the SEC. The last 3 years, they weren't really great in kickoff returns, but they were definitely a hell of a lot better than Nebraska was. In 2023, they were 19.5 yards per return, 76th nationally, 9th in the conference. 2024, 20.7 yards per return, 56th nationally, and 5th in the conference. These are still numbers you can win with, though. Don't get me wrong. These are still numbers you can win with. Nebraska's best numbers, as you can see in this area here, in 2023, they were 14th nationally at 23.93 per return. That's 14th nationally, 3rd in the conference. And I'm going to back it up too real quick. I'll post it back up in here. If you look at Nebraska's punt return production, in 2022, you see it's 15.4 yards per return at 8 nationally and 1st in the Big Ten. That was on 5 returns. Nebraska had 5 punt returns for an entire season in 2022. I mean, what a joke. How are you only returning 5 punts? What an embarrassment. God, that's so freaking awful. Outside of 2022, Nebraska only their best average was 4.87 yards per punt return. They're basically kicking it and, hey, fair catch, I'm too scared to return it. Or our scheme is so damn bad that my gunners can't block and I'm going to have nowhere to run. It's just an embarrassment how bad our special teams was. I mean, their best season at punt return was when they had 5 returns. That's so bad. On to the other big news of the week. Nebraska landed Rocco Spindler from Notre Dame. We talked about this as well last night on Justin's live stream. The big thing with Rocco is he's a proven, I'm not going to say power 4 because Notre Dame's independent, but you might as well call him power 4. He's a proven Power 4 offensive lineman. He had 402 pass protection plays in 2024 and allowed 0 sacks. In the last 2 years at Notre Dame, he played 1,325 snaps at Notre Dame. He allowed only 2 sacks. His pass blocking grade on PFF was a 71.8, so basically a 72. His run blocking grade was a 70.3. And that was on 747 snaps this year. Absolutely phenomenal. Depends on who you look at for recruiting. I like to look at all of them just for comparison and whatnot. But he's a top 3 interior offensive lineman in the portal. He started 23 games at Notre Dame. Rocco is a guy that has proven he can play at the highest level. He's played for a winning program, a winning tradition. They lost the national title game, but he was there. He had a great accomplishment as a team at Notre Dame to get to the national title game. This is a guy that's going to be your day one starter at right guard. Rocco's dad flat out said to Husker Online that they had an offer for $1.5 million for 1 year. And that's a lot of money. That's well over the market value for an interior offensive lineman. That is top tackle money. Part of that is there wasn't a lot of options in the portal of his caliber, so he just naturally was driving the price up. We know Nebraska didn't pay $1.5 million for an offensive lineman, especially an interior lineman. But between Rocco and Pritchett, Nebraska is in well over $2 million for both of them. I would say you're probably pushing 2.5 to 2.8 million for the both of them. The jokes about 1890 can stop now. Especially because a lot of the people that make the jokes, oh, they're $18.90 because they don't pay money. Get out of here with that shit. That's so bogus and you know it. Dane Key was one of the top portal players in the cycle. I guarantee you Nebraska's paying him $600,000 to $800,000. Maybe even more. And Isaiah Hunter was one of the top portal players, especially at wide receiver. Nebraska's probably paying him $600,000 to $800,000. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here. I apologize. And then we just talked about how we have at least $2.5 to $2.8 million on 2 offensive linemen. Nebraska in 1890 have plenty of money. Plenty. The jokes can stop. And especially if you don't donate. Like, stop complaining. You ain't helping if you ain't donating to 1890 anyways. You ain't got a reason to complain if you didn't donate. Nebraska's got money. We know they do. And I hate the argument, oh, they don't have a $20 million roster, so they're not going to pay $20 million. Well, if you want a $20 million roster, you got to overspend a little bit to get guys. Because winning is how you're going to get that $20 million, a true $20 million roster. When you're winning, people want to play for you. They want to play for a winner. Shocker, right? Oh my gosh. Elite players want to play for programs that win? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. What a concept. So if Nebraska paid 1.2 or 1.3 for Rocco, which is over his market value, who cares? He's a day one starter. And if he helps you win 8 or 9 games next season, it's worth it. Because when the next season rolls around and you're on the up and up still, you can go to a guy of higher talent than Rocco or better talent than Rocco and offer him maybe the same or maybe a little less. Because you know what? You're winning. People want to play for a winner. That's all I've got for today. Please make sure you like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, share everything. It does me a huge, huge, huge favor when you do those things. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you joining me, and welcome in to the Cornhusker Huddle.